Hello there and welcome to our nightly news program. I'm your host Karim Fazakari, bringing you the latest updates from around the world. To the headlines. Police officer charged with voluntary homicide in Nail's case as French government faces public outrage. Algerian government demands justice and protection for nationals. Clashes erupt as Zionist army storms village in occupied West Bank. Several Palestinians were injured and others arrested in Nablus. Algeria joins wide international condemnation against burning of Holy Quran copy in Stockholm. Kiev counterattack continues amid Western support and NATO accession aims. Hello again and welcome to the program. First off in our news, Algerian Foreign Ministry said that Algerian government is following with great interest the developments of the tragic case of Nail and is keen to stand by the community in times of danger, affirming its shock and dissatisfaction with the brutal and tragic death of the boy and the disturbing circumstances surrounding the incident. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry indicated that Algeria is confident the French government will fully carry out its duty to protect Algerian nationals there. The police officer who killed Nail in a Paris suburb was on Thursday charged with voluntary homicide. This comes as the French government races to ease public anger while protesters planned a tribute march. Nabil Khazini reports.
In Nanterre, there is no much sign for calm to the soaring anger. Although French authorities are keen to avoid a repeat of the scenes of violence, containing the spiraling public anger over the killing of the young man, Nail, doesn't seem to be simple. It is another day and tension are still simmering. Efforts to call for justice for Nail was led by his mom during a march where the mood amongst people in the suburb was frustration and a deep feeling that trust is now broken.
The young man left us for nothing. We're not saying we're not contradicting the state. We're not contradicting the legal or police procedure. Yes, he was driving a car without a license. He tried to flee, but he should not be killed. That's all. They shouldn't have fired.
Following the chaos, a crisis meeting was held. French President Emmanuel Macron said the unrest was unjustifiable. But for those taken to the street, it is indeed justifiable. Nail's killing was so brutal, and his only mistake was breaking traffic rules while driving a rented car. Prosecutors have now charged the policeman involved in the killing with voluntary homicide and requested that he is put into custody. And the authorities in France reacted by sending more and more police to the streets.
It goes without saying that those who set fire to schools and town halls will be found, arrested and brought to justice. In any case, I want to tell you that the government's response will be extremely firm, and from this evening, everyone must understand that public order will be restored.
The epicenter of the unrest was in Nanterre, a working-class town on the western outskirts of Paris. The fatal shooting has fed into long-standing complaints of police violence from within the low-income, racially mixed suburbs that ring major cities in France.
To speak more about this horrific incident, we are joined live via Skype by Mr. Abdunnour Toumi, Maghreb Studies expert, researcher at Orsam, Turkey, from Paris. Hello, sir, and thank you for agreeing to be with us.
Good evening, sir, and thank you for having me.
So, Dr. Abdunnour Toumi, 2 nights of consistent protest in France following the killing of the boy Nail. What is the general sentiment after this crime that lit France and led to violent clashes? Is France on edge now here?
It is indeed on the edge, and it is making the government and notably the president himself, President Macron, is anxious and worried about the unfold crisis. And this is because he knows well, President Macron knows well, if he can't contain this in the next 48 hours coming, he's going to be haunted by the 2005 revolts that went on for 3 weeks. But the difference between 2005 and this tragic killing of the teenager Nail, it's different because of the new revolt, and this revolt, and let's put it in this way: the relation between the Republic, the French Republic, and its children, because Nael is a was the child of the French Republic. So what the politicians, the media, and the arrogant elite, the Parisian arrogant elite, have been saying this and holding this as if it's like a law and order issue. Nonetheless, it is it's a matter of social issue on one hand. On the other hand, this again kind of events have become a chronic disease that French government, right and left, still don't know how to handle it because it's...
So speaking of how the government is going to handle such incident, Dr. Abdenour, Tomi, Nahel is the second person this year in France to have been killed in a police shooting. And last year, however, 13 people died this way. How do you assess the government's handling in general of such incident, especially when ethnic minorities are targeted?
That is, it is, and you are right. The question is now, targeting the minority group, ethnic groups, and notably North Africans and Sahelian with Sahelian descent. So, and this implies or explains also the, let's say, the media here start to use the Americanization of the society, therefore of the police, and the police now has, not the entire institution of the police, but some of the police and the majority of the police with their strong union that is leaning toward the right and the extreme right parties, who have covering them up and given them kind of legitimacy using the power. It's very simple. They shoot first and they talk later, but they don't measure the consequences that they are facing today, and which leads to a serious revolt. It's
clear.
The media is using it as riots, but seriously, it's not banal riots. It's a serious revolt that the French government is very, very worried about the consequences. And then, as I said, if they can't contain this in the next 48 hours, it's going to have another perspective on the relation again between the so-called suburbs / banlieues and the French Republic.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdenour Toumi. You were live with us via Skype from Paris.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to other news now. British Foreign Secretary James Cleverly voiced support for reform in the UN Security Council during a speech at Chatham House in London. Cleverly emphasized the need for Africa to have a permanent seat in the Council, along with India, Brazil, Germany, and Japan. He described this as a bold but necessary reform that would bring the Security Council into the modern era.
We will find solutions to global challenges either together or not at all. And I want to proceed with plans for multilateral reform across my 5 priorities in that spirit, while standing up for UK values clearly and unambiguously. And I recognise that multilateral reform is exceptionally difficult to bring about, but it will bring huge, significant benefits for the UK and the wider world.
On the second day of Eid al-Adha, Sudan witnesses significant developments. The army deployed special forces in Omdurman, while the governor of North Darfur declared a ceasefire following intense clashes between the army and the rapid support forces. More details with Mohammed Khatir.
Fighting continued between the army and the rapid support forces in the capital Khartoum and other Sudanese cities during the 2 days of Eid al-Adha, or sacrifice festival celebrated by Muslim communities. To end what it calls a rebellion by the rapid support forces, the Sudanese army announced the deployment of special forces in the city of Durman near Khartoum amid news of the armed forces carrying out airstrikes on rapid support forces positions east of the capital.
Durman is just the beginning for us, altogether for the cleanliness of the city of Durman. And to move to Khartoum and Khartoum North to help our brothers there.
After its residents had experienced difficult circumstances recently, the state of North Darfur in the west of the country witnessed relative calm after the local government and civil administration agreed on a truce and a ceasefire.
توصلنا إلى أننا لن نربح من القتال بل نخسر.
We knew that we wouldn't win from fighting. On the contrary, we would lose. The result was that we agreed to a ceasefire in the state of North Darfur with the agreement of all these parties and other parties in this state and this city. They played a role in peace and security.
لعبت معنا دور بغرض الأمن والسلام.
Meanwhile, the number of refugees and displaced people from fighting areas issued by international bodies are diverging, the latest of which was issued by the United Nations, announcing the displacement of more than 2,100,000 people since mid-April.
The occupation forces arrested 2 Palestinians, Khalid Sabah and his son Samir, during the raid into the village of Orif, south of Nablus, after besieging a house for about 5 hours. In Jenin, Palestinians suffocated from the poisonous gas fired by the occupation forces during their storming of the village of Tura, west of the city. The clashes erupted after the occupation army stormed the village adjacent to the apartheid annexation wall built over the village lands, which led to the injury of a number of Palestinians to suffocation. The Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, condemned the Zionist settlement, describing it as a flagrant violation of international norms and UN resolutions. In a statement, Guterres denounced the plans revealed by the Netanyahu government to build more than 5,500 settlement units in the occupied West Bank, while the occupation forces stormed the West Bank and assaulted Palestinians.
The Secretary General reaffirms that settlements constitute a flagrant violation of international law and relevant United Nations resolutions, and once again urged the government of Israel to immediately and completely stop all settlement activities in the occupied Palestinian territory. These continued settlements undermine the possibility of a contiguous and a viable sovereign Palestinian state, which hinders the ability to achieve the two-state solution.
Still in the Middle East, the International Monetary Fund warned in a report on Thursday that without reforms, Lebanon will continue to see triple-digit inflation and public debt in the small crisis-ridden country, which could reach nearly 550% of GDP by 2027. The last report came as a follow-up to a 9-day visit by IMF officials last March. The economic crisis in Morocco intensifies as the kingdom's treasury faces bankruptcy. The Moroccan Research Center projects raw financing needs exceeding $13 billion this year. The latest report reveals a budget deficit of $2.5 billion in the first 5 months, a staggering 77% increase compared to last year's figures. The representative of the Polisario Front in Spain, Abdullah Arabi, affirmed that the front strictly demands any Spanish government to fulfill its responsibilities and obligations regarding Western Sahara, calling for cancelling the position of the Spanish head of government, Pedro Sanchez, which contradicts international legitimacy and supports Morocco's expansionist policy. In a statement to Europress, the Sahrawi diplomat said that the Polisario will always call on the Spanish government to recognize that Spain is the power managing the territory of Western Sahara. In Brussels, European Union leaders are looking for a deal with Tunisia aimed mainly at combating migration and controlling smugglers' network. 2 weeks after one of the worst migrant boat sinking in the Mediterranean. Earlier this month, Commission President Ursula von der Leyen accompanied Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte to propose a broad cooperation agreement, potentially worth over €1 billion, to Tunisian President Kais Saied to provide budgetary support for the country.
The Commission President Ursula von der Leyen speaks of the necessity to think out of the box when it comes to cooperating with third-party countries and ways of avoiding the dying in the Mediterranean Sea. We need to rethink our cooperation with third-party countries when we look ahead to the possibility of asylum procedures in safe third-party countries.
To other topical news now, Algeria has condemned in the strongest terms the Swedish extremist burning of a copy of the Holy Quran in front of the Grand Mosque in Stockholm after they were authorized by the Swedish authorities to organize a demonstration to commit this heinous and irresponsible act. A statement by the Algerian Foreign Ministry affirmed Algeria's total rejection of this provocative incident and emphasized that these disgraceful and repeated practices are liable to stir up hatred and provoke the religious feelings of Muslims. The statement added that Algeria renews its call to uphold the values of tolerance, dialogue and coexistence, reject extremism and prevent offense to all religions and their sanctities. In the Swedish city Stockholm, a man burned and ripped the Holy Quran outside the mosque on the first day of Eid al-Adha as anti-Islam extremists were given earlier this week permission to demonstrate. Meanwhile, many Muslim and non-Muslim countries, for that matter, condemned Sweden for this incident. More details with Salman Asib.
A man ripped up and burned a copy of the Holy Quran outside Stockholm Central Mosque on the first day of Eid al-Adha, after Swedish court and police authorities have given permission to anti-Islam extremists to demonstrate. In addition, Swedish police rejected multiple recent requests for anti-Quran marches in the past few months. Yet, the court have overruled those decisions, saying they infringed freedom of speech. Meanwhile, yesterday, dozens of Iraqis gathered in front of the Swedish embassy in Baghdad to protest and voice their anger.
Be free. The Quran is our honor, our moral, our constitution. So we will defend the Quran till our death. Go support the Quran. Yes, yes to the Quran.
Following the incident, many Muslim-majority nations, including Turkey, reacted and showed their anger. For his part, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan slammed Sweden over the burning of the Quran and said Turkey would never yield to a policy of provocation or threat.
I clearly want it to be known that, as Turkey, we will not yield to the policy of provocation and threats. We will teach the arrogant Western people that it is not freedom of expression to insult the sacred values of Muslims.
For his part, Russian President Vladimir Putin was also against what happened in the Swedish city and believed such incident was disrespecting people's religious feelings and is tantamount to a crime.
It is sacred for Muslims, and it must be, and it is sacred for other confessions. We know that in other countries they act differently and don't respect the religious feeling of people. They also say it's not a crime. In our country, it is a crime.
It's worth noting that the incident of burning the Quran risks to arouse Turkey anger as Sweden bids to join NATO. And according to the State Department Deputy Spokesperson Vedant Patel, Washington continues to encourage Hungary and Turkey to approve the accession of Sweden to the alliance.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said on Monday in Lithuania that a high-level meeting is expected to be held next week in Brussels to try to agree on Sweden's membership in the alliance. Stoltenberg said he was in regular contact with Swedish and Turkish officials to resolve the ongoing disagreements that are now blocking Stockholm's accession to the alliance. Kiev remains engaged in a determined counterattack as it seeks to regain control over Bakhmut, while NATO is actively working towards facilitating Ukraine's accession to the alliance. Hossein Barkan has more details.
Ukrainian forces intensify their counterattack to regain control over Bakhmut as clashes persist along the river line from Dnipro to Zaporozhye, extending to Melitopol. Meanwhile, Russian Defense Ministry in Kramatorsk claimed the lives of 2 Ukrainian generals and around 50 officers.
На Донецком, Краснолиманском и Южнодонецком направлении.
According to the latest information, a high-precision strike on June 27 in the city of Kramatorsk of Donetsk People's Republic against a temporary deployment point of Ukraine's 56th Separate Motorized Infantry Brigade killed 2 generals, up to 50 officers, and up to 20 foreign mercenaries and military advisors who were participating in a staff meeting.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, during the EU-NATO summit, stressed the need for continued support to Ukraine in its conflict with Russia. The focus is on preparing for a long-term war and providing a military assistance to uphold Ukraine's independence.
We are not party to what is happening in Russia. This is a problem that Putin has brought to himself. We can only observe it. And our goal here is not to change the government, a regime change in Russia. Our goal, which we are pursuing, is an independent Ukraine.
In turn, Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg emphasized NATO's commitment to supporting Ukraine and expect new declaration of military support at the summit. Furthermore, a multi-year program to enhance Ukraine's alignment with NATO and ensure its full interoperability with the alliance is set to be agreed upon.
What matters for NATO is that we will continue to support Ukraine. At the summit, I expect new announcements of military support to Ukraine. We will also agree a multi-year program to help Ukraine move towards NATO, to be fully interoperable with NATO. So we just need to continue to support Ukraine and ensure that Ukraine prevails as a sovereign independent nation in Europe.
As tensions remain high and the conflict continues, efforts to support Ukraine and pave the way for its NATO membership remain at the forefront of the international discussions.
In related context, Russian presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov on Thursday declined to comment on the whereabouts of Russian General Sergei Surovikin as unconfirmed reports of his arrest circulate. In response to a question about whether he could comment on the information that Surovikin had been excluded, Peskov said the Ministry of Defense should be contacted, as it is authorized to make a statement in this regard. On the second day of Eid al-Adha, pilgrims continue to perform the ritual of stoning pebbles and circulating around the Kaaba. In the morning, they went to the Jamarat facility in Mina before returning to Mecca after spending the days of Tashriq for the final turn or tawaf around the Kaaba.
I feel great to be stoning the devil, because he tempted Prophet Ibrahim, so he stoned him. So we, as Sunnis, follow in the footstep of the Prophet Ibrahim when he stoned the devil, and we do it as if we are really stoning him.
To a lighter note now, the International Football Federation announced the monthly classification of national teams for the month of June. For its part, the Algerian national team won 6 places at once, to be in the 33rd place in the world and the 4th in the African continent. In addition, the Egyptian national team ranked 34th in the world after it was ranked 35th in the rankings last April. Well, that's the end of our news program, but stay tuned for more news from around the world on our social media platforms. I'm Karim Zachary signing off. Till next time, take care.